Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. King's X video again, Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. So I talked about Ear Candy yesterday from 1996, first album that came out since I was a fan, and the last one on Atlantic. Or they did release the year after '97 a best of, which was pretty much just a way to just finish out their contract. I was reading about that in the book here. Talked about how they wanted Atlantic to drop them because they had new management, but Atlantic didn't make a decision. Atlantic wanted to keep them on, and in fact, they had some ideas of what they wanted to do with them. But King's X is like, well, they got new management. We just been, with Ear Candy even, and before that, Dogman, it just didn't blow up like they thought we might. The next Beatles and etc. So their contract had one more release, and so it was just a best of, which, that's usually just not a good sign when bands do that. But they wanted to get more sales, and at least the best of the CD did. And I was relatively new to the band, so I had all their albums, but I still wanted to support them, and it had 3 new tracks. That was the biggest motivation. In fact, I have a T-shirt with the best of, which has their album covers on it. Got the cat there again, but here it is, and the 3 extra songs. There's a live version of Over My Head. Sally, April Showers, and Lover are all pretty good. Sally especially, that's one I've always liked. Of course, Kimber put out Sally, Can I See You, or I Can See You. I always thought of the King's X song when she released that, but it's a compilation. It has a lot of their most well-known songs: King, Goldilocks, Summerland, Pleiades, It's Love, Mr. Wilson, Black Flag, Lost in Germany, Dogman, Cigarettes, The Train, Looking for Love, Life Going By. Life Going By was a little surprised to put it on there, but they had those extra songs they hadn't, obviously released, but they had already finished. They'd written them, and they decided we'll record it for this release. But just so we can finally free ourselves from the major label from Atlantic Records. So that was in '97. I need to get my list. I have my list pulled up, but I don't generally I don't put compilations on my list very often. Occasionally I do, but anyway. So then they signed. Brian Slagel had been a fan, and then also reading the Fates Warning book, Metal Blade Records had interest to sign King's X right around the time they signed Megaforce, a little bit after that. I think it was around the time they signed to Megaforce. He knew about them, because they were being lumped in with the metal crowd. Again, is King's X a metal band? Not really, but they're heavy enough at times. They have some songs that could be considered metal, I guess. Anyway, so they're out of it, and then Brian Slagel found out they were basically not going to be with Atlantic, and he just contacted us, well, if you guys want to do something with us, Metal Blade would be happy to have you. So they did, and then they released their first album in 1998, the next year, on Metal Blade Records. And that story I told about Fates Warning, because Fates Warning was a long-time roster member of Metal Blade and that tour, and then King's X was there was talk they were going to do a tour together and it didn't happen, kind of like the Rush thing. Again, I haven't read anything about that in the book, the oral history book, but I need to do some research. Maybe that's not, I just remember that story that guy told me. I think it might have been after the Fates Warning show. I don't remember, in 2001 or whatever. But I also associate when I was in Wisconsin at one of those shows at Shank Hall. But anyway, so they put out Tapehead in 1998. It was released. It was the first album of a bunch of albums they put out on at least 3 or 4. They put out on 3, I believe. Yeah, they sounded Inside Out with Overtones, and Blacklight Sunday was independently released. October 20th, 1998. So it was like whatever that would be. That'd be almost 24 years ago. 24 years ago in a few days, on Thursday. Tapehead. So here's the book. I'll show I have the vinyl. The vinyl was pressed on for Record Store Day. I want to say in 2021. It wasn't this past year, it was the year before. Yeah, and then of course one of those the records that came out on Record Store Day in 2021 came out on Black Friday Record Store Day. But so actually, technically, this is the first new all music, all new studio album, newly written music for the studio album that they released since I had become a fan. Even though it felt like I'd been a fan much longer because I became a fan in '96, but it was. Here, I'll get the vinyl. That I believe it's a Gatefold. It's a colored. I showed this, I believe, last year at one point when I got it. I'm sure it with my wife. I'm not sure, but Tapehead. And the thing is, Tapehead. I think of cassette tapes, but then there's a Monkees or Nesmith thing that has a Tapehead connection. I think it's Nesmith. He had like a video series, maybe. All I know is because I've heard my wife talk about it being the Monkees and Nesmith aficionado and fanatic. It's kind of sad. We just found out someone we know, a friend of ours, who was a big Monkees fan that we've known for years, passed away yesterday. R.I.P. Jane. But there's a connection with Tapehead. I don't know if it was 2 words or 1, but of course there are Monkees connections. I don't think reading how they came up with the title here. I'm gonna ruin this. It's like I'd call it like not a purple, like a pink or like raspberry kind of color. It's interesting. This is Svart Records. It was released under, of course, because Metal Blades. Well, it was released on Metal Blades initially. Svart Records are the ones who pressed it. So it's not a double though, even though it's a gatefold. But let me just it's gonna bug me. I gotta correct 1 or 2 things also. I think it was Nesmith, but I don't think this is Tapehead as in 2 separate words. Of course, there's like Tapehead, like Scotch tape, the head of the tape, like on the dispenser. Very rare, tape heads. Michael Next tape heads. He put out, was it a film or a TV series, like a sketch? Yeah, tape heads. It was a sketch comedy, part of maybe Elephant Parts or Television Parts, something like that, or it was like a continuation. John Cusack. No, it was a movie. Sorry, it was a movie. He put out. Michael Nesmith produced. 10 years before, 1988. Interesting. Called Tapehead. So I don't know. The book doesn't mention that. Of course, Christian Nesmith's mentioned in here, as I mentioned yesterday, during the Bulbous period. He's friends with the guys, especially Doug, and he's a big fan. I think they even Christian Nesmith covered one King's X song. Anyway, but I just found it interesting. I didn't know that obviously until a couple of years ago when my wife mentioned it, talking about Tapeheads, the movie. John Cusack was in it. So this album, getting to the album itself, it's not an album that I've ever gotten I've never been attached to it. I've always kind of liked it, but I've also always felt like I didn't enjoy it as much as really the albums around it. I don't say it got forgotten because I knew it and I saw them in effect at least once, maybe twice, where they supported it. And they played a bunch of songs, and in the subsequent tours, they played songs from it. I mean, I think it's a pretty good record. It's a fair amount like Ear Candy in that it flows pretty well. It doesn't flow as well as Ear Candy, I don't think, but it reminds me of like Dogman meets Ear Candy in some ways, but then also I hear moments of some of the other records that follow, especially like Ogre Tones. There's a very similar sound. The guitar style, Ty basically, from Dogman on, really took a different approach to tuning and his even guitar tone. He does some of that pitch bending and stuff like that, but there's a lot of power chord, a lot of, similar kind of, what's the word? I just listened to it. They're just sort of dissonant power chords, but Groove Machine is maybe the most well-known song on this album. Galactic Cowboy Orchestra covered that, the local band from Minnesota. There's a couple of bands that covered that. Fade was a single. They did a video for that. Over and Over, Ono, Cupid. And Ocean, I forgot how good. That's the one real clear-cut Ty song on here. That's on the first side of this the vinyl. The first side rather. On the B side of the vinyl, Little Bit of Soul is a great track. I mean, it kind of fits. It's very kind of groove and soulful. It's almost bluesy. Higher Than God is catchy. Happy is epic in some ways. It's like 5.5 minutes. It's kind of dark at points, but it works. And then I would say World is the other one that I appreciate. That reminds me, it's like taking what they did with Go to Hell. It's almost like a power pop punk, like a very melodic punk song, but it works. It's even though it's not very long, it's very energetic, very upbeat. World. And it's kind of don't think about that song. I don't think about that song when I think of this record. I don't think of that song, but I think it's sort of a song I've overlooked. So I'd say World and especially Happy. But Hate You is it's got its moments. Mr. Evil, I'm not crazy about. Walter Belafarkas, that live little thing, the experiment that was really just kind of inspired by Yoko Ono, which is kind of funny because of course there's the song Oh No, and I always think of Yoko Ono for that, but that just seemed like Oh No. Yeah, I don't think that's actually about Yoko, but even though but it's maybe there's an underlying connection, but it didn't say anything that I recall in the book. But I mean, this is kind of a dark record, and again, it reminds me more of Dogman than of Ear Candy. It's not quite as heavy as Dogman, but it's sort of the tone and sort of the brooding subject matter at points. It depends. It's sort of hit and miss. Some of the songs are more uplifting, but the ones that aren't, they're sort of downers. I don't get as much from. But ironically, Happy has some kind of dark lyrics, but the music itself, When Your World Comes Crashing Down and there ain't nothing you can do about it, then when everybody's done you wrong and you're feeling, that's kind of like, it reminds me of what he would do when they're talking about Over My Head and everything live. But yeah, I mean, the Overtones. Tapehead, I don't know if I feel dramatically better about it, maybe slightly, but I think, I don't know, I guess partly because I really came to enjoy some of the records that followed it, it kind of got lost by the wayside. It kind of got caught in the middle in that, but as a whole, and especially now revisiting it, I haven't listened to it in many years. It's underrated, I think, even though on Rate Your Music, it actually is rated higher than some of the records. I didn't even realize. I'm not surprised. Rate Your Music is just one site, rateyourmusic.com, but it's pretty close in terms of ratings, but with less ratings to Ear Candy. And ironically, some of the albums that followed are rated much lower. That's just weird. Until XV, really. So, that's the thing. I mean, I guess I think a lot of the people that are on Rate Your Music, and a lot of the fans that, they're not fringe fans, probably really appreciate this. They appreciate this compared to some of their other records. Not that so much the records before it. I think that's the real thing to see, is you just look at their string of albums, and they were very consistent, King's X. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess I've overlooked it a little bit, and I still enjoy it. Where it comes in the rankings, and when I do those in a few weeks, can't say, but I definitely can say I'm glad I revisited it today. And look at the pictures; it's like very psychedelic. King's X could easily be called a psychedelic band, a psych band. But so all right, let's look at the year that was 1998. Which 1998 has always been a year that I haven't been in love with from a standpoint of a year. I don't have the right file open. I'll have to do this quickly. Let's see, open. There it is. I mean, I think of the late 90s and everything that happened to Dream Theater first and foremost. Of course, Doug had been on Falling Into Infinity in 97. He'd guest on Lines in the Sand. I always thought when that happened, like King's X is going to blow up among all Dream Theater fans. I think they did to an extent, but not to the I thought everyone was going to be talking about King's X left and right among the Dream Theater fan base. It didn't, even though Portnoy's even interviewed and quoted in this book by Greg Pratt, The Oral History, a number of times. And of course, John Mayung worked with Ty Tabor with Ty Tabor in Platypus, which I'm gonna show some of the stuff. I don't know where my Platypus CDs are at the moment. 98, I have Leitmotif, which Dredge. You know, that's their debut album. It came out that year. It came out the year after. It came out in 2001 on a major label. So I still consider a '98 album at this point. It's still number one. Liquid Tension Experiment, the first album. Speaking of Dream Theater, Superior's Unique. I might even bump that up. Pain of Salvation, 1 hour by the Concrete Lake, number 4. You know, King's X, Tapehead finished at number 18. So, right below Platypus when Puss Comes to Shove. I may have to revisit, but there's some good stuff. I mean, I think of '98, and I don't think it had that many good records, but in fairness, it actually did. Marillion's Radiation and Jeff Buckley's Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk. Oh, those are two favorites of mine. Shadow Gallery's Tyranny, Enchant's album Break, one of my favorite Enchant albums. Angra's Fireworks, the last Angra album with Andre Matos, and the last Angra album I really enjoyed at all. Chroma Key's Dead Air for Radios, Manson's album 6, that prog album, the one prog's Manson album basically. Fates Warning's live album Still Life. Galactic Cowboys put out At the End of the Day. Yeah, I'm going to have to revisit some of these rankings. I still like that album, but I don't know if I would put that ahead of some of the stuff below it. Vast Visual Audio Sensory Theater at 14. Spock's Beard's Kindness of Strangers. 15. Pancho Sanchez Afro-Cuban Fantasy. I'm not sure if that's a compilation or not, but at 16, I got that from the library, I remember, many years ago. Pancho Sanchez is someone I saw once live and I've always enjoyed. It's Afro-Cuban jazz, but... So yeah, then you have Platypus from Puss, the debut album, and then Tapehead, number 18. Valinor's Trailer, prog band from Europe, Kingdom of Sadness, number 19. Push Monkey's self-titled album, number 20. Sculpture, the first Sculpture album, The Spear of the Lily, is Orioled. I can't even pronounce that word. The Gathering, How to Measure a Planet. Refuse, The Shape of Punk to Come. The Ty Tabor album, Moonflower Lane, which I just tracked down just when I was, and I don't know what I did with it now. Was it right here? The book. I have it anyway. I own that. It's one of the only Ty Tabor I have a physical copy of. Anyways, Marillion and the Positive Light Tales, so they did that and Radiation that year. The Tokyo Tapes from Steve Hackett, Man and Machine from Soundscape, the EP. And, you know, I'm starting to get to this point where I was making these lists that go 40, 50, 60 deep. And, you know, I have Van Halen 3, an album I listened to maybe once, at number 49. A lot of live albums, Self's EP Brunch, some of this stuff, Gorguts Obscura, you know, it's a kind of, the iMegaphone from Imogen Heap was at 35. Without Warning, this pure prog metal band called Step Beyond, their last album, at 31. Opeth's My Arms Your Hearse, not an album I've loved, but it's all right. I had that at 29, so. And Pound Hound, another King's X, the debut album from Pound Hound. He did a couple more after that, Doug Pinnick. Massive Grooves from the Electric Church of Psycho-Funkadelic Grungelism. This is a mouthful. Rock music, yeah. So you had a lot of content from King's X after they got out of the whole thing with Atlantic. You had, besides Tapehead in '98, that was October, you had When Puss Comes to Shove, and you had Pound Hound, and you had Moonflower Lane. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I think some of that stuff came out earlier in the year. You had a lot, until this came out, you had a lot of, if you're a King's X fan, you're waiting. You had the compilation the year before. I mean, it was even though they went down to a Metal Blades as a smaller label, there was a lot of reasons to enjoy being a King's X fan at that point. So, yeah, I wanted to correct the thing I couldn't remember that I read in here, and this is still I'm not fully clear on, but I mentioned how Doug Pinnick saw Jimi Hendrix when they played at Woodstock '94. He saw Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, when he was 18. He did not, or met Jimi Hendrix. He did not, according to this, he did not actually. They talked about Woodstock and Woodstock '69, the '69 festival that started it all. He did not go to Woodstock, I guess, and he didn't necessarily meet Jimi Hendrix. But it says he said he was 19 in here, when actually, based on his birthday, when Woodstock was held in August and his birthday's in September, he was actually just about to turn 19. So he was born in 1950. But so the two things I wasn't aware of all these years, that and the Brendan O'Brien thing causing basically all the vocals to do by Doug, but on Dogman, which is kind of weird because this album too, other than I think Ocean. And of course Walter Bella Farkas, which there are some screaming, but I think that's done by Wally Farkas from the Galactic Cowboys anyways, on tour, at '96 tour that I saw them. They did a bunch of different shows and then they just recorded one of them, live when during the encore, and the fans were shouting for Mission, and they go into Mission for a few seconds. But Walter Belafarkas. Other than those two tracks, I think all the other songs are sung by Doug, and I think one of these songs maybe Ty sings one of the verses or the chorus. I can't remember, but this is like 70-80% Doug again, which wasn't quite as much on Ear Candy. But as the subsequent albums came, other than Manic Moonlight, we had more Ty and even Jerry, I've noticed. I mean, it's still the majority of the vocals are sung, or the lead vocals are done by Doug Pinnick, but it's interesting. So, anyway, what's your take on King's X album Tapehead from 1998? Do you enjoy it? Is it one of your favorites? Is it a forgotten album? Is it underrated? Please let me know. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you have subscribed recently, thank you very much for that. The next week, I don't think I can do anything the rest of this week. I don't know. I'm getting my COVID vaccine on Thursday. But next week, of course, we got at least 2 more. I may have an extra day, so we got like 6 or 7 more of these King's X videos, and then the ranking. I'm going to show some other, possibly like the side projects ranking video. There was one, and then a review. I guess I'll do an overview. I've been talking about this book, The Oral History, a ton throughout this whole series. I might do a final thoughts about it. So, and I found my Cloud Cult book, so I have some more books to do reviews for. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.